Buenas a todos, chavales. Otro jueves más con el Inside Star Citizen. Que en este caso se llama La existencia de la persistencia. Quieto ahí. No te calientes. Calidad 1080. Dentro asunto, chavales.
Hey all, Space Dad here, coming to you from a secret facility that we'll be talking more about next quarter. Now, Alpha 318 has a whole lot of features that
Está hablando, es una instalación secreta que hablaremos más a lo largo del siguiente trimestre. Y está en área 18.
players have been anxious for updates on. And while we'll get to all of them like we always do before this quarter is out, we wanted to take this week's show and slow things down a bit for an uninterrupted, unabridged chat about persistent entity streaming. What it is, how it's been going, where it's at now, and what's coming up next. And we'll get back to our normal features next week. But for now, please join me in welcoming Benoit Beauséjour, CTO of our partners at Turbulent, for what we're calling our very first PES report.
Vale, nos van a hacer el primer reporte del Persistent Entity Streaming y nos van a como desglosar lo que es el PES. Y dicen que para la semana que viene continuarán enseñando nuevas características que van a implementar al juego. Vamos a entrar en detalle de lo que es el PES.
So, Benoit,
De lo que es y lo que será.
welcome back to ISC. To start things off, give us a nickel version of what persistent entity streaming is.
It's a
Bueno, este es
persistent entity streaming is a
Benoit Beauséjour, que bueno, es los chavales que tienen en Montreal del equipo de Turbulent y son los encargados de hacer esta tarea, ¿no?
system that allows us to persist the entire game world and restore it from disk so that it's never lost and changes from players are meaningful.
And what's
¿Qué es lo que es el Persistent Entity Streaming? Bueno, pues es algo que nos permite guardar el estado del mundo y para que nada se pierda y que los cambios que hagan los jugadores tengan un significado en el mundo.
that look like to the player? How will players know if PES is working or not?
They're gonna know because every time they come back to the same server, the state will be the same. So if you leave a ship, a can, or any kind of items in the world, it'll stay there.
¿Cómo el jugador se dará cuenta de que está funcionando la persistencia? Pues si entráis en el mismo servidor y dejáis un vaso, una lata, un objeto, una nave, seguirá estando ahí.
You blow up a door, it'll be blown on that server forever.
Tú revientas una puerta y estará reventada en ese servidor para siempre.
Part of this is something that cleans up the junk afterwards, right?
Yeah, some items will be covered under lifecycle management, which they'll get recycled, right? Because obviously we need some kind of janitorial system behind the scenes. But there also are discussions about gameplay to do that, to help players, to get players to help us clean up the game world. But yes, that's a new avenue that persistent entity streaming opens up.
Bueno, están comentando el tema de la cantidad de mierda que se puede acumular, de que algunos objetos tendrán un ciclo de vida para poder limpiar el servidor, pero también están pensando en formas de hacer que los jugadores participen en cómo mantener el servidor limpio.
All right, so we brought everyone up to speed on what PES is. Let's get to the updates. Now, last time we heard anything was from Chris's letter from the chairman back in May, where we'd just dropped something on the ground, shut the servers down, brought the servers back up, and it was still there. What's happened in the last 3 months?
Well, so the team, which is a fairly large team at this point, has been working really hard to get our first stage delivery to what we call game dev, which is our main branch. What that means is we've moved from a prototypical work branch into what everybody in the company is using to develop the game. And so that's the big achievement, is now the technology is in the game dev branch. So everybody is using it in day-to-day, day in, day out testing. So all the bugs appear, they're right in our faces. We fix them right away. It's been a bit of a crazy time. but that's the big achievement in the last three months is that we've stabilized the technology enough so that the entire company can now be working on it.
Vale, uno de de los grandes logros del PS es que ahora mismo pues se utiliza como herramienta en lo que es los estudios de Cloud Imperium Games y ya pueden trabajar, la gente ya puede trabajar con él, no es un prototipo o algo que esté en bragas, ¿no? Sino que ya pueden trabajar con él y a la hora de reportar bugs y demás, como lo están utilizando, y como la herramienta es más consistente en general, o el conjunto de herramientas que utilizan, pues les es más fácil poder solventar problemas.
Define
¿Y qué es lo más gordo que han hecho en estos meses? El conseguir eso.
crazy.
The define crazy, everything being on fire, like you know, this technology touches on every subsystem in the game. So transit was busted, stuff was persisting in the wrong locations. You couldn't log into the game because obviously with PES comes a new login flow to get players into the game because we need to bring your items into a new database. So that entire system was also rocky to get in because there's a lot of cases to deal with, like timeouts if you have too many items. What happens if you have too many items? And dealing with all the different stages of the login from authentication to you being actually spawning in the game. And so it's been a lot of debugging and
Cuando habla el tío dice que ha sido una locura y dice, define locura, dice Escolando. Ha sido una locura esta herramienta porque toca todos los sistemas del juego, desde el transporte hasta cómo spawnea un jugador, que han tenido que volver a revisar la forma de cómo un jugador entra al juego, si tiene consideraciones como si tiene demasiados objetos.
Encountering issues on different types of machines because when we start, all the developers have some pretty good machines on those feature branches, but when we move to game dev, now we're exposed to all kinds of different hardware, and timing issues occur. Those are the
Claro, también está comentando de que tenían que lidiar con diferentes tipos de hardware porque los desarrolladores en el estudio tienen un hardware potente, pero tenían que lidiar con el hecho de los diferentes tiempos de carga que podría haber en las diferentes máquinas de los usuarios.
Weird ones to find. They're really difficult to trace, in fact. But so that's been the craziness is getting exposed to way more machine types or users as well, right? Like the game requires a lot of resources to run when we develop locally, and so sometimes one service doesn't start on somebody's machine, and that causes all these crashes to start being reported, and now we have to investigate them. And so that's been a bit of it's the real time effect that makes it crazy. It's like
Bueno, ya nos está comentando un poco, en realidad nos está... Porque está diciendo de que, claro, de que al ampliarlo a un número de usuarios, integrarlo a un mayor número de usuarios, que es donde van a haber los problemas y que van a ser locuras de bugs y tal, que sobre todo relacionados con las líneas de tiempo, parece ser con los tiempos pues de trabajo y tal, de lo que es la mecánica de guardar persistencia y demás. Y de gente pues, que tenía problemas para loguear un server o lo que sea, que eso provocaba fallos y luego pues tenían que pues una cantidad de reportes larguísimas sobre fallos acerca de ese tema. Y que de alguna manera, pues lo que nos está contando también es que ahora cuando se abra PTU, no lo está diciendo directamente, pero bueno, está diciendo que cuando se abra a más gente y a más número de gente y a más hardware distinto, a más diferente hardware, pues obviamente se descubrirán más fallos. Probablemente sea uno de los motivos por los cuales vamos a tener 3 meses de PTU de 3.18, ¿no?
we're not making technology in a bubble anymore where everybody's using it, and so that makes it really, really difficult to follow. But it's been fun to finally get the technology in the hands of people that can really adjust it for the game and for the players, and so that's been fantastic.
So that's
Está diciendo como comentario final que realmente ha sido bastante divertido el poder llevar esta tecnología a manos de gente que sabe cómo poder ajustar estas tecnologías a las necesidades del juego y de los usuarios.
been the last
Refiriéndose al tema del posible seguimiento que tengamos que hacer o sea, que tengamos... Bueno, nosotros vamos a tener que hacerlo también como jugadores, mandándoles ese council, pero el posible seguimiento que puedan hacer ellos en la empresa de los problemas que tenga la tecnología para tratar de resolverlos.
couple months, but where are we at right now?
So right now on the technology side, we're in bug fixing mode, right, and identifying the elements that are left that are still, rough around the edges. So I don't want to call it polish. It's really bug fixing, bug testing, stabilization. Stabilization is the right word. That's what we're doing right now. So it's feature parity and making sure everything works the way it should. On the other side, there's a new team that's kicking in work, which is deployment teams, right? So this is taking the technology that we have working on a game dev build and locally, and basically breaking it up into a lot of small services that run in the cloud. So the operationalization of the technology, that's what we're really focusing on now. It's
Me dice que ahora mismo en el estado de la tecnología se encuentra en que hay un grupo que está sacando la mierda gorda, lo dicen con otras palabras, pero para entender, no están haciendo pulido fino, sino que están sacando la lija del 8, chavales. Están sacando la lija del 8, los errores gordos y tal, tratando de que sea estable la tecnología que hay. Y luego hay otro equipo que está simulando partidas, está simulando sesiones con servidores en la nube y demás para probar la tecnología.
like a dependent project, right? So this allows us to basically bring the game to you guys. That's where we can do PTU. So PTU is a lot larger than a developer running the game on his machine. Even though there's tons of services when we go to the cloud, we've got operators that deploy that on multiple machines and scale this out. This is made to scale. So now it's about testing that that's true. So we've got the technology is working. Now we're trying to scale it out to the cloud, see, how many users we're taking in there, the weight of the entities, how many entities we end up having in the databases, can they reload fast enough, testing all of the facets of the assumptions that we had, but really getting this technology ready to be deployed for players to play on.
Bien, la idea ahora es prepararse para poder desplegar la PTU, porque PTU pues ya es otro tipo de rollo, no es un desarrollador ahí en su oficina haciendo las movidas, o sea, refiriéndose a que ahí sí que ya se ve, o sea, que podemos hacer simulación y tal, pero donde se va a ver realmente es en manos de los jugadores y asegurarse de la rapidez, la velocidad a la que es capaz el sistema de trabajar para poder hacer que aparezcan los objetos y demás.
Has the recent change in server player counts had any effect on PES testing or its development?
Aquí está.
Well, at first we thought it was going to have an effect, but the reality is the same amount of entities get stored, whether 100 players are simulated or 50. So no, for the moment there is no side effect to having more player caps, because obviously there's more entities being changed, but ultimately for the
A ver un momentito, aquí
no side get stored
For player counts
of the assumptions that we had, but really getting this technology ready to be deployed for players to play on.
Has the recent change in server
vale, entendí region y recent. Los cambios recientes de número de jugadores, de incremento de número de jugadores, afecta al PES de forma negativa.
player counts had any effect on PES
O sea,
testing
afecta, tiene efectos, supongo que se refiere a problemas, ¿no?
or its development?
Well, at first we thought it was going to have an effect, but the reality is the same amount of entities get stored, whether 100 players are simulated or 50. So no, for the moment there is no side effect to having more player caps, because obviously there's more entities being changed, but ultimately for the same amount of players online, whether they're divided on 50, 100 players per server doesn't change anything for PS.
Dice que no, que sí que las entidades, que son el mismo número de entidades que tienes que almacenar en el servidor, que haya más o menos jugadores, sí que es cierto que puede haber cambios más frecuentes, pero que en las entidades, debido al interactuar más jugadores en la sesión, pero que no afecta. De momento no hay efectos secundarios a tener más jugadores. Efectos secundarios negativos, entiendo.
Great, awesome. But what's next? Where do we go from here?
Where do we go from here? It's a straight line to deployment, right? That's the only thing that matters right now is to make sure that the technology can run in the cloud properly, that it scales out, that if we have more players coming in, either in a short period of time or in a long period of time, that we can, add more provisioning, add more machines to run it, making sure it operates well at scale. So when, all of you guys are online to make sure that everything's functioning properly, that we recover from errors. This tech comes with a lot more observability than the previous systems.
Hay una cosa que están diciendo de que tenga la capacidad. Lo importante, o sea, que lo importante ahora es sacar la tecnología y que esté preparada para recibir el impacto de la llegada de los jugadores. Refiriéndose pues a la cantidad de número, que si todos estamos online, que el sistema no se rompa, ¿no? Tratar de tener la capacidad de previsión de añadir las máquinas suficientes como para que el sistema pueda resolver la carga de trabajo.
That we had, so we have tons of graphs and like data that's coming in from the system operating. We're, the teams need to get used to this to be able to identify problems, to be able to help support. We have a bunch of new tools that we're also working in the last stretch here to allow game support to help players that have issues. Character repair is something that we're starting to work on. Mind the word here is not character reset, but character repair, which is something that we can now do.
Esto es interesante. Están diciendo de que van a meter una nueva herramienta para aquellos jugadores que tengan problemas que consisten en reparación de personaje, no reseteo. Recalca, ¿no?, que no es un reseteo de personaje, sino que ahora tienen la habilidad de poder reparar el estado de un personaje.
That we could not do before, so that will allow us to not, just destroy people's inventories and items, but really go and fix one issue so that they can keep playing. So we're trying to get that in before we launch it, because we think that would be very beneficial for if there are corruption events again. We're trying to. The technology is made to not have those, but better safe than sorry.
Claro, dice, la tecnología está hecha para que no sucedan esos fallos, pero mejor guardar el asunto y ver que se pueda, o sea, mejor protegerse contra posibles mierdas que haya. Y el tema está en eso, de la habilidad de que si hay un fallo en el personaje, que poder corregir ese fallo y no tener que destruir el inventario del personaje entero, como se hace ahora con el Character Reset. La verdad es que es una noticia cojonuda, que pongan eso en el juego.
So that's really the work now, is login flow and PES is just stabilization and deployment so that we can launch it. So it's beeline for 3.18 is all. It's like we're banging on it until it gets in properly.
Now, I know we don't like to do dates, but we got a whole lot of player testers waiting to help bang on the pipes. You wanna forecast anything?
Oh, no, I'm not even going to try to gamble on that one. I mean, we have it running in the cloud. It's running, right? But, before we're comfortable not sending the ETF team into just fire drill, that's going to be, there's a big difference between testers, internal testers, developers using the system, and when we get real users on it, it's completely different, right? And so it's hard to say for me. Like I don't want to forecast it.
Dice, ¿te quieres mojar? Sé que normalmente no hacemos fechas, pero ¿te quieres mojar en alguna fecha para decirle a los jugadores cuándo estará? Y dice, no me quiero meter ahí. Y que dice que es algo muy distinto, que está ahora mismo probándose y funcionando a nivel interno, pero que es algo muy distinto que funciona a nivel interno que luego sacarlo de cara al público, que son dos cosas muy distintas, ¿no? Y cuando se sientan cómodos y tal, pues...
That's fair. Now, before we let you go, I want to reiterate that PES isn't a traditional feature like players are used to. When it works, Star Citizen isn't going to look any different. It'll just be another step closer to functioning like we've always intended to. It's a major step forward in stability when all is said and done.
Yeah, I'm not saying we're not going to have wipes anymore, because there's always data changes that will require us to do that. But we're really hoping that the technology will allow us to have consistent data, which we don't always have right now. Every player's had horror stories of how they're losing their Moby glass or their eyes. Which is incidentally one thing I discovered in this project, is that if you don't have eyes, you don't see markers in your visor. That's an interesting one. So trying to make sure that the data's, the technology will make sure that the data is safe and sound. So
a ver, un momento, vamos, es que tengo que volver a escucharlo porque no me queda claro.
We're not going to have wipes
forward in stability when all is said and done.
Yeah, I'm not saying we're not going to have wipes anymore, because there's always data changes that will require us to do that. But we're really hoping that the technology will allow us to have consistent.
Vale, no voy a decir que no tengamos que hacer wipes nunca más, porque eso hay que escucharlo bien. Pero definitivamente pensamos que la tecnología es consistente,
Data, which we don't always have right now.
lo cual no siempre tenemos ahora mismo.
Every player's had horror stories of how they're losing their movie glass or their eyes. Which is incidentally one thing I discovered in this project is that if you don't have eyes, you don't see markers.
Dice cosas como no tener ojos, y una cosa que descubrí en el proyecto es que si no tienes ojos no tienes marcas interesantes.
In your visor. That's an interesting one. So trying to make sure that the data the technology will make sure that the data is safe and sound. So obviously less corruption. So that's the first thing we expect. Second one, stuff will persist. And to be honest, at this time, we don't totally know what that's going to mean when we put real players in it, right? So
Right.
we do have.
Vale, dice, los cambios van a ser la estabilidad, que va a haber más estabilidad que antes, y la persistencia de los objetos. Y dice, sinceramente no sabemos qué es lo que va a significar eso cuando esté en las manos de los jugadores. O sea, las consecuencias que tendrá el que persista todo.
Have life cycle systems and cleanups and all that stuff. Yes, we've planned for that, but we don't yet know what you guys will do with it, and that will greatly affect how the technology functions, right? In the end.
Claro, dice, tenemos ciclos de limpieza y tal, pero no sabemos todavía qué es lo que vais a hacer con ello. Y, hostia. y puede que tenga grandes efectos secundarios.
So that's going to be interesting to see. So as a player, stuff you put on one server will stay there, right? It's there until that server gets, wiped manually. But by default, every server will just persist. Like you said, it's a stepping stone technology. Really, what this means is behind the scenes, the simulation and the replication of the game. So simulation is the stuff that runs the physics and the rendering and the AI, right, is one thing. And the replication, which is sending updates and the state of all these entities as they're being simulated. This used to be like this, right? And now with PES and the game server, this is split into two. And that's the big achievement that PES allows us to do. Yes, we get persistent state. That's awesome. That's great. But the real thing is that we separate simulation from replication, and that allows us to do server meshing after that. And that's the whole.
Dice, el logro del trabajo que hemos hecho es haber separado lo que es la simulación de la replicación. La replicación es donde se guardan los datos de lo que está sucediendo, del estado de las cosas. Y la simulación es qué ocurre con el mundo, el comportamiento de los objetos en el mundo, ¿no? Entonces, el haber separado esas dos cosas es lo que nos va a permitir, comenta, ¿no? Lo que nos va a permitir hacer el server mesh.
That's the reason why we're doing this.
Y eso es la razón por la que estamos haciendo esto, dice.
All right, last question then. How do you feel?
Good. I feel good. Tired, but we're in the home stretch, so I'm happy. I'm happy about where we are. I'm happy that the company now can use the technology and see what it's like to persist everything. I mean, our dev servers are now littered with stuff flying around, which is cool. But I know I feel good. I feel encouraged. Also stressed out because we need to scale it, right? So it's that 10% that takes 90% of the time, right? So that's the effect I'm a bit stressed out for, but it's okay. I feel good about it.
All right, Benoit, thank you.
Dice que están en un punto en el que, bueno, pues se siente genial porque está esta tecnología en manos de la empresa, del resto de usuarios de la empresa, ¿vale? De los empleados. Pero que dice que bueno, que también es el estrés de tener en cuenta que tienen que escalar esa tecnología y tienen que... O sea, que van a tener que escalar, ¿no? Que llevarlo esto al paso gordo, que es llevarlo pues a los jugadores.
For your time, man.
Thank you, man.
So, what did we learn this week? Well, hopefully, it's that persistent entity streaming may not be the most visual of features, but it is the next big step in realizing a universe where players can truly leave their mark. The last major milestone that'll make server meshing possible, and that it's still heading your way in the upcoming Alpha 3.18. Now, thank you for taking this ISC detour with us this week, but don't worry, we've still got 4 more episodes left this quarter where we'll be covering things like hull stripping, cargo refactor, the new 600i and MSR crash lights, and more, as well as meeting the performance capture team and exploring their new facility next door. and then maybe we'll stop by. His people are talking to my people.
A ver, cabrones. Un momento. Ya empezamos con las movidas antes de la con, tío. Ya empezamos con las discolandadas, tío. A ver, el tema dice que bueno, que este es el paso para que los jugadores podamos dejar nuestra marca en el verso, el PES y demás también. El que se abran las puertas del camino hacia el server mesh. Y algo ha dicho ahí, a ver si es que siempre estamos igual, tío.
100i and MSR
El tema también de que nos hablarán de estos meses, o sea, de este mes, de las 4 semanas que están por delante, del cargo refactor, o sea, ha dicho chatarra, cargo refactor y chatarra, cargo refactor y los precios de la 600 y de la Mercury en Daymar. Y el tema de movidas que están haciendo en el estudio de captura de movimiento y lo que quiero saber es algo más.
Cargo Refactor, the new 600i and MSR crash lights, and more, as well as meeting the performance capture team and exploring their new facility next door. And then maybe we'll stop by. His people are talking to my people. We'll see what we can make happen. For Inside Star Citizen, I'm Jared Huckabee. We'll see you all next week.
Vamos a ver, chavales. Os dais... Ya sé lo que es, tío. Sabéis que es de lo que vamos a hablar.
Their new facility next door. And then maybe we'll stop.
¿Qué es esto? ¿Qué es esto? ¿Alguien sabe lo que es? ¿Sabéis lo que es o no?
As well as meeting the performance capture team and exploring their new facility next door. And then
El hacking. Está claro, chavales. El hackeo. Efectivamente. Efectivamente, chavales. Claro. Claro, tiene toda la pinta. Tiene toda la pinta.
Buenas.
Muchas gracias, Villanarca, por esa sub, tío. Gracias por apoyar el canal durante 26 mesazos. Y... madre mía.
and maybe we'll stop by. His people are talking to my people. We'll see what we can make happen.
The only constant in game development is change. La única constante en el desarrollo de videojuegos es el cambio. Vale. Voy a exportar esto para que quede ya, chicos, para la gente que no haya podido verlo ahora. Se viene. Se cuece. Nos está con...
Gets, you know.
Se cuece bastante. A ver. Vale, tengo que esperar un poquito a que avance la movida. Se viene todo lo gordo. A ver, voy con los chavales. ¿Se me escucha? Hola.
Hola, se escucha, se escucha.
Que telita, ¿no? Lo que se viene, chavales. Aquí así, pim pam.
Hombre, lo del hacking, eso puede molar muchísimo, ¿eh?
Sí.
Hacking y la ingeniería, a mí, yo quiero ver cómo lo hacen. Me atrae
Se
mucho
te
eso.
escucha como si tuvieras el micro en la bañera, tío. Igual es verdad, ¿eh? Que lo tienes en la bañera, pero...
Estoy en la bañera, sí. Pues no sé.
Ah, no, que estás en la bañera, cabrón.
No, me no.
Ah, yo qué sé, la gente está muy loca, tío.
Pues el micro está igual que ayer, macho.
No,
A ver.
igual te ha pillado otro micro que no es.
Déjame ver.
Te habrá pillado otro micro, tío.